everyone, welcome to our panel discussion for human communication. Today, our panel is diving into the application of social exchange theory in human communication. For your information, we actually have 4 panelists, but there are only 3 here, as you can see, because our 4th panelists are in overseas for a job. We are going to unpack how an economic metaphor shapes our most intimate social structures. To start us off, panelist 1, could you give us the background? Where does social exchange theory actually come from?
Okay, thank you, moderator. To understand social exchange theory or SET, you have to realize it isn't just one isolated idea. It's an interdisciplinary blend rooted in sociology, psychology, economics, and philosophy. First, it draws heavily from concepts of operant conditioning, which suggests human behavior is repeated if it's rewarded and avoided if it's punished. Second, it integrates utilitarian economics and philosophy from thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, who argued that humans rationally seek pleasure and avoid pain. Finally, sociologists George C. Homans and Peter Blau expanded this into social structures, proving that while Homans looked at microscopic personal interactions, Blau looked at how these calculations create power and obligations. Essentially, the theory posits that all human interactions are formed by evaluating gains and losses.
Excellent. So it's a framework where social interaction is viewed as a transactional ledger. Panelist 2, let's look at the lectural metrics used in this ledger. What are the core concepts we use to measure a relationship?
Okay, thank you, moderator. So there are 4 primary concepts in social exchange theory that help us evaluate the quality and stability of relationship. First is reward. So reward refers to all the positive outcomes that we receive from a relationship. This can include emotional support, trust, companionship, appreciation, affection, and even social recognition. These more reward a person receives, the more valuable the relationship is perceived to be. So the second is cost. Costs are the negative aspect of sacrifice involved in maintaining a relationship. Example include time commitment, emotional stress, conflict, misunderstanding, financial expense, or personal sacrifice. So when costs become too high, people may begin to question whether the relationship is worth maintaining. Okay, so the third one is called comparison level or CL. This refers to a person's expectation about what they believe or they deserve in a relationship. These expectations are usually shaped by a past experience, family upbringing, cultural influence, or observation of the relationship. If the reward received meet or exceed the expectation, the person is likely to feel satisfied. However, if the outcome fall below the expectation, dissatisfactory may occur. So finally, we have comparison level for alternative, also called as CL. This is the evaluation of where are better alternatives available. For example, a person may compare their current relationship with the possibility of being single, focusing on their studies or entering another relationship. If the alternative appear more rewarding than the current situation, commitment to this relationship may decrease. In simple terms, social exchange theory suggests that people continuously compare reward and cost while also considering the expectation and available alternative. This factor influence both relationship satisfaction and long-term commitment. That's it.
Now that we have the metrics, let's look at how they are implemented in a specific real-life scenario. Panelist 3, your research focused heavily on romantic relationships. How does communication act as the actual currency in this action?
Thank you, moderator. In romantic partnership, communication is the primary vehicle through which resources are transferred. Relationships are established and maintained when communication successfully yields a psychological profit. For example, when a partner offers emotional support like active listening and verbal validation during stressful academic period, it acts as a massive socio-emotional reward. This reward directly lowers the psychological cost of vulnerability. Over time, consistent, equitable communication establishes trust. Once trust is established, relational uncertainty drops, and the relationship evolves from a series of calculative, short-term transactions into a stable, long-term partnership where both parties feel safe investing resources. Finally, companionship. Sharing humor, time, and common goals act as an ongoing baseline reward that offset the heavy social cost of loneliness.
Thank you, panelist Steven. So, healthy communication maximizes rewards. But what happens when the leader enters a deficit? What do relational costs look like when challenges emerge?
Challenges completely derail relationship equity. Take miscommunication. It acts as like a massive tariff or barrier on an exchange channel. A routine transaction suddenly demands immense emotional energy, and if a partner doesn't feel heard, the value of emotional support drops to zero. Furthermore, unequal effort directly violates the norm of reciprocity. Equity theory tells us that partners actively monitors the ratio of their inputs like time or sacrifices against their output. If one individual continually expends effort arranging contact and compromises while the other offers nothing, the under-benefited partner is hit with immense fatigue and resentment. This introduces structural damage that erodes the entire partnership.
This sets up a perfect transition to our next core requirement, managing a critical situation or a crisis from a communication perspective. Panelist 4, when chronic dissatisfaction, a breakdown of trust, or an external crisis hits a couple, how does social exchange theory explain what happens next?
In a critical situation, whether it's severe miscommunication or a total lack of reciprocity, the overall relationship outcomes plummet well below an individual's internal comparison level. The partnership is effectively bankrupt. When this crisis occurs, an individual's cognitive focus shifts directly to their comparison level for alternative. They rationally analyze whether their core emotional, social, or physical needs would be better fulfilled alone or with a different person. Now, from a communication perspective, the survival of the relationship depends entirely on the tools used to manage this crisis. If the couple uses positive communication strategies like deep empathy, active listening, and compromise, they can systematically minimize relational costs and repair stability. This cooperative dialogue builds social capital, which reforms the relationship framework so it can withstand future conflicts. However, if destructive communication or linguistic alienation persists, the perceived costs remain permanently higher than the benefits. Once alternatives appear more satisfying than current reality, the psychological commitment drops and the relationship dissolve.
That explains the analytical strength of the theory. But human beings aren't always cold. Rational accountants, especially during a crisis. Panelist 4, keep the floor. What are the key limitations or weaknesses of analyzing critical situations solely through this transactional lens?
That is the primary critique of social exchange theory. Its biggest weakness is that it oversimplifies complex human relationships by assuming we always operate on pure logic and profit calculations. In a real crisis, emotions and loyalty completely disrupt economic rationality. For instance, if a partner experiences a severe personal struggle or illness, a person will often continue pouring in massive inputs while receiving zero rewards.
They stay because of deep emotional bonds, family expectations, or long-term commitment, completely defying short-term utility. Conversely, people also remain trapped in deeply toxic or costly relationships due to non-rational factors like financial dependence, a psychological fear of loneliness, or structural manipulation, as it simply cannot fully measure the profound depth of human emotional attachment.
Incredible analysis. It's clear that while the transactional ledger gives us an amazing roadmap for structural choices, the psychological reality is deeply layered. Let's wrap up our panel with a quick final takeaway from each panelist regarding the ultimate role of SET in human communication. Panelist 1.
My takeaway is that our daily interactions are rarely random. SET reminds us that humans fundamentally seek balance, fairness, and mutual reciprocity in their communication circles.
Panelist 2.
Okay, I do emphasize that we must be mindful for our expectation. Understanding our internal comparison level help us communicate what we need clearly, preventing unexpressed expectation from turning into relation costs.
Panelist 3.
For me, it's about active investment. Communication is the literal heartbeat of this framework. To maintain a healthy, long-term relationship, you have to be ready to actively give commitments and inject rewards rather than just draining energy out of the channel.
And panelist 4. Your final word?
Ultimately, while social exchange theory is a brilliant practical tool to analyze human interaction, it works best when paired with an emotional and psychological perspective. It proves that while we might unconsciously track our emotion investment, it is our continuous, affectionate communication that transforms those raw numbers into a profound human connection.
Beautifully said. That brings our panel discussion to a close. Thank you to our panelists for their insight and thank you to our audience for your time.
Bye.